Weed is a nice, warm little security blanket that helps you hide from all the troubles in the world, except the only problem is it doesn't actually make them go away. It just makes you forget about them and act like they're not there until they finally creep up and kick your ass when you're too weak to look at it. Look, all weed really does is show you who you really are on the inside, and depending on who that is, should tell you whether or not you should be using it. What up, everybody? Welcome back to Operation Moksha. As always, I'm your host, Chris Roscoe, and today we're going to be talking about weed. Weed is a really interesting topic because it's highly controversial, like a lot of the topics that I want to discuss here, and I want to give you a really balanced, integrative look at it because I actually like weed, but I'm also aware of all the problems it could cause and all the ways in which it could potentially make my life worse if I don't have it in the proper place. Because for me, I smoke weed when I'm all done with work for the day. I look at all the things I gotta get done and I make sure that they're all done, and then I smoke my weed afterwards as a way to relax and also as to help facilitate my shadow work. Because the thing is, for me, what weed does is it just makes me aware of what I already am under the surface. It reminds me of this really great quote from Bob Marley that I heard back in high school, which is, when you smoke the herb, it reveals you to yourself. And I was the kind of person that used to always get really anxious when I smoked weed. I would always get really paranoid. And so I stopped for a really long time because I just couldn't deal with it anymore. But as I started to get into my shadow integration practice, and I understood what anxiety was, which I have a video about, if you struggle with anxiety, check that out. And once I understood where my anxiety and depression and all these terrible things that would come up for me when I would get high, once I started to understand where those were really coming from and what they were, and I started to be able to work with them, I would smoke weed and I wouldn't feel as bad anymore. I would still feel paranoid, I would still feel terrible, and I would still feel all those things, but it was to a manageable level. And so I would actually use it to help facilitate my shadow integration practice when I was all done with work for the day. I would get all the physical things that needed to get done, I would talk to my clients, put out my content, answer emails, answer messages, do all the stuff that I needed to get done, and then once I was all finished for the day, then I would smoke some weed. And the reason that helped me was because it would bring all my emotions to the surface and it would make my internal world something that I couldn't ignore if I wanted to. And so I had to face these emotions. Now, obviously, there was a point at which I could smoke too much and become overwhelmed, and the whole thing just becomes ass backwards and counterproductive. So if you're that type of motherfucker, maybe ease up. But I would have to look at the thing, because the difference between poison and medicine is dosage. If you take the thing when you shouldn't, it's going to be a poison. But if you take it in the right time and place, it's a medicine. And plus, there's also two different types of stoners. There's the type of people that smoke weed to bring up their emotions so that they can work with it, which is what I do and have done for the last decade or so. And there's also people that smoke weed to shut down and forget about their emotions. So if you're the type of person that does that, I would recommend taking a break, or at least, if you're gonna smoke, take a look at the parts of you that you're shutting down. Own the fact that I want to do this because I don't want to feel things. I want to do this because I'm uncomfortable. I want to do this because I'm escaping from something. Because honestly, one of the most dangerous things about weed is that it allows you to feel comfortable in scenarios that you shouldn't feel comfortable in. It allows you to cope and feel comfortable in scenarios that are not actually good for you. Like, yeah, it's good that like you can smoke a little bit of weed and like relax and chill and have a good time and like take the edge off or whatever. But if you actually have shit you should be doing and you smoke weed and it makes you forget about it, that's pretty shitty. Because what ends up happening is all the things that you know you need to be taking care of, you're fine not taking care of them. And so they just go on and on and on and they never get dealt with, and you get to the end of your life and you're like, fuck, I didn't do any of the things I wanted to do. Now, obviously, you can point to the fact that there's like Seth Rogan and Snoop Dogg and all these people that smoke all this fucking weed and are wildly successful. But are you Snoop Dogg? No, you're probably not Snoop Dogg. Be honest with the fact that maybe weed is getting in the way of you doing these things. Be honest with yourself. Like, there's even times where I've used it recently in ways where I'm like, that probably wasn't the right time. That probably wasn't, like I had more shit I needed to do. And so I just kind of reflect on what had me do that. What was I escaping from? What was I escaping to? What didn't I want to face? Even when I use it in times that I probably shouldn't, which is getting more and more rare these days, I still use it as an opportunity to reflect on why that is and where that comes from. So weed can be a tremendously powerful tool to help you understand yourself, to help you face your emotions, to help you integrate them and become a more whole human being. Or it can be a poison that helps you hide from yourself, hide from your responsibilities and obligations, and ultimately hide out from the things that would make your life truly satisfying and rather just like temporarily enjoyable. Because let's be real, if you smoke weed the moment you wake up and you got to smoke every single day, that's when it does actually start to get addicting. Because it's not like chemically addicting. Everybody knows weed isn't chemically addicting, but it is emotionally addicting if you're really fucking honest about it. When you can just smoke this thing and all of a sudden you're filled with good feelings and everything feels nice, why would you do all the hard, scary, terrible things? Like, that's going to become an addiction. Or if you smoke the weed and like it makes you incapable of going to do those things because you're just fucking brain dead, also not good. Don't do that. That's not good for you. Because eventually you will get to a time in your life where you wish you would have done more, you wish you would have been present, you wish you would have connected with people, you wish you would have actually gone out and done the things you wanted to do with your life. And so if you are the type of person that uses weed to hide out, you're probably in for eventually a rude awakening, and it's better to just let yourself face it now than face it when it's too late to do anything about it. But if you are the type of person that uses weed to face your emotions, then at least be judicious about when you do that. Make sure that the things in real life that you actually have to accomplish are fucking done. Make sure that you've actually been the person that you wanted to be that day so that you can start to face whatever you need to face and grow as a result. Because what I do almost every night is I smoke weed before bed and I do a focused shadow integration practice where I sit there and I imagine the world that I want to live in. Because again, it makes my imagination more vivid. It makes my internal world more present, and it just brings everything up. So I imagine the world that I want to live, and I imagine the kind of guy that I want to be, live in that world, like enjoying it, having a good time, doing all kinds of really dope shit. And as I'm imagining those things, I'm looking for all the parts of my personality that think I can't have it, or won't do it, or don't deserve it, or anything like that. So as I'm imagining, I'm also looking at all the parts of myself that say I can't have it, and I'm acknowledging them. I'm processing those emotions, I'm processing those thoughts, and I'm ultimately looking for why those parts of me think that so that I can integrate them. And then the next day when I wake up, I'll have grown a little bit more. I've been a little bit more further along the path because I did this deep introspective work. However, it does need to be stated again that if you're the type of motherfucker that does these things to hide out, you're not gonna get that benefit. All you're gonna do is do whatever you need to do throughout the day and then wipe your brain and then wake up being like, okay, well, what now? So don't do that. You have to be really honest with yourself, because that is the real way that you're gonna know whether or not you're using it as a poison or a medicine. You have to get really fucking honest. And even be honest if you're using it as a medicine more often than you should. Because there have been times in the past where I would have like resistance to doing something, and so I would smoke weed to face the resistance, when honestly I could have just done the thing, whatever it was. Like there's times where I've used it as a cop-out, where I could have put in more work. I could have done these other things, but instead I ran away and hid in like the safe, warm embrace of Mary Jane, or whatever you want to say. And that does happen. It's easy to do. So if you're the kind of person who's gonna wanna play with these things, you have to be really honest with yourself. And if you don't have the capacity to be that honest with yourself, maybe just don't fucking do it. Like take a good long break and see who you are without it, and see who you become, and see what happens to your mind. And then if you really feel good about it and really feel good about where you're at in your life, maybe slowly reintroduce it, see how you relate to it, see what it brings up with you and all these sorts of things. But again, you have to develop fairly strong relationship with your goals. You have to form a fairly strong relationship with your truth. You have to form a fairly strong relationship with your own integrity. And you have to have certain internal resources in place in order to be able to use something like this and have it not turn into a poison. It requires a strong degree of integrity. It requires a strong degree of honesty. And honestly, like you have to have something that you're fighting for. Because if you don't have something that you're fighting for, where you're like, this is who I want to become, then you could easily just numb yourself out for the rest of your life, like I said before, until it gets too late and you're like, oh fuck, I didn't do anything with my life because I was too busy smoking weed every day and playing video games or whatever. So and I have a course on this, form a positive vision for your life that genuinely makes you feel good and genuinely makes you feel alive. And work towards that. Work towards becoming the kind of person that you want to become. And then once you have a vision in mind of where you want to go and what kind of person that you want to be, and you're actively working towards that, then that is when you can become really honest about whether or not this thing is pushing you forward or holding you back. If you don't have that, then you should probably just stop until you have that, or maybe even use it to create it. But if you don't have a meaningful vision that you genuinely care about, that brings you alive to fight for, you're gonna hide out in God knows what forever, and weed is just one of many things you could hide out in. So form a vision, make sure that you're working towards it, and then as a result of that, you can decide whether or not this is something that you should be doing or not. Because if it's getting in the way of your vision, if it's getting in the way of you becoming the kind of person that you wanna become, pretty clear answer, you should probably knock it off, at least temporarily. Whereas if you're the type of person where you can put it in its proper place, make sure that you get done what you need to get done and work towards the things that matter to you, and then you can enjoy it and use it to unwind at the end of the day or use it to be introspective or whatever, and it doesn't get in the way. In fact, it helps. Wonderful. Keep doing it. That's what I do. But be honest, because the Snoop Doggs and the Seth Rogans are not that common. There's not that many of them. Then there's a reason for that. is because to have this thing that numbs you out and makes you feel good, but also have that match with ambition and drive and all those sorts of things, that's not very common. These are often opposite sides of the personality that if they're not integrated, you can really get yourself into some trouble. So quit using the cop-out of Seth Rogan and Snoop Dogg do it, and honestly ask yourself if you actually can match their ambition and their drive and their vision and all the things that they've been able to accomplish. Look back on your life, and should you really be comparing yourself to them? Probably not. So take a look at the impact that it's having on your life, your vision, your standards, your values, and see whether or not it's helping or hurting you. If you have more questions about this, let me know, because this could potentially open up a lot of different conversations and things like that. And if you do have more questions, let me know. I'll be happy to address any secondary issues or anything like that. But until then, I'm Chris Roscoe. I love you. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.